All right, recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hi, Anna. I'm just going to keep letting people in as we go, but I do want to start on time. Admit. I do want to start on time and kick us off. You can hear me okay. I'm going to make sure everyone is muted. Hi, Mary Jean. Hi, Sarah Ellen. Yay. So, okay. So welcome to another virtual edition of the Champagne Society. Cheers if you're already on alcohol, that's fine too.
It is noon.
This is 12:03, no judgment. I would love for us to just dive into the chat box. As you know, if you've been to the Champagne Society in person in Charleston, it's a really chatty place. So it's really hard for me to reconcile the fact that now we're on little squares of video. So hop into the chat box and let us know why you made time for this today. Because I know it was really hard to do this. We've got Jen and Alexis here that are joining from their playrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And my
Kids'
door,
playroom.
my door is locked with death threats happening. So, type in the chat box, let us know what inspired you to make time for this today, because I want to make sure we keep serving you guys with conversations that are unfiltered and judgment-free, but also meet you where you're at and serve a purpose so that you're making time for yourself and you feel really good about that. If we've never met, since we've got some new faces, I'm Gervais. I'm the creator of the Champagne Society, a mindset coach for moms, and I'm your host for this call with myself, Alexis of Not Safe for Mom Group, and Jen of Motherhood Understood. We're going to introduce them real quick in a minute, but first, I just want to set some ground rules about what to expect here. So the Champagne Society has always been a judgment-free place to talk about the juggle of motherhood and mental health. So this conversation in particular, I want it to be a stigma-free place for you to talk about the highs and lows that you're experiencing in motherhood and mental health and COVID-19 and homeschooling and all of those things. And our goal that we've talked about, me, Alexis, and Jen, is for you to leave this call feeling a whole lot less like the only one, and to have a refreshed take on how to make all those conflicting feelings that you might be feeling right now coincide together in a way that is okay. Because I think a lot of times we make some feelings bad, some feelings good, and so then whenever you have the bad feelings, you feel like shit for extra amounts of time. And so we want to do less of that and make that human experience a lot more manageable just by being honest. So some guidelines of what to expect. You're all muted, but if you have a question, just unmute yourself and chime in. If you have something that you want to reflect to somebody, or just a question that you want to ask one of us, like how this relates to you in general, please just unmute yourself and chime in. That's why I've made these not webinars, so that you can see each other, because I think it's kind of fun to see each other. Sorry, there's more people to admit that I forgot to look at. And during this call, as always, at the Champagne Society, somebody might share something kind of vulnerable, and that's okay. And this is a safe place to do that. But when that is happening, please pour some love into the comments box and make sure that they know that they are not the only one, and they just feel seen and validated. That's like a real gift that you can give to each other right now. And we're in the trust tree. So no judging, ever. No matter what anybody is saying, it's probably going to be a different experience than what you're experiencing, and that's okay. But let's just stay in the trust tree. Cool? I'm going to hop in this chat box. There are things happening. I love the feeling of connection I get from virtual meetings. Me too. Oh, we do snaps for Me Too. If you've been before, you know that, which a lot of you guys have. So snaps. I cannot hear your dog, Jen. Every time you speak, I'm inspired. Aw, that's nice, Mary Jean. Here to connect and engage with other beautiful mothers. That's the right place. I made time for this call because this stuff is hard. If I don't get my mind right, it's hard to help the others around me. Kids, Nate, and my quarantine. I haven't heard that before. That's cute.
That's good.
Struggling with the coronavirus juggle, full-time working mom of three with 3 small children and homeschooling one of them. Me too. Having a hard time and curious to hear how others are handling it. Kara, I feel your pain. Same boat as you. Okay. As you can see, we're already all in the same thing together. So I want to start by introducing my panelists. I'm just going to say how I met you guys since we haven't actually officially met. And then I'm going to have each of you just introduce yourselves and tell them a little bit about your unique Mama Juggle right now and the communities that you've created. But on my left, which is probably not your left, I've got Alexis, and she is the creator of Not Safe for Mom group. And basically what's happened for me as a gatherer of women, I've been doing this for several years, but I really focus on doing it in person for the last 2 years. And so I really don't like to spend that much time on the interwebs. And I really spend all my time gathering people in person in Charleston, South Carolina. So as soon as the coronavirus hit, I was like, well, shit, I best see what cool things are going on online. And then I found Alexis and I was like, whoa, she has this community called Not Safe for Mom group, which we're going to link to it in a follow-up email, but you guys have to go and check out what she's doing. She just is moderating these amazingly transparent, raw conversations that moms are having. I think you do such a beautiful job of moderating what seems really challenging. I can't wait to hear more about that. But also like creating the space, holding the container for moms from all over to just share what their experience is and have like a conversation, and sometimes anonymously, which is so helpful because you don't want to like say it in case there's judgment. So it's a stigma-free place for moms, and I love it. And then Jen, I had actually stalked already because she lived in a place where we were going to do an in-person Champagne Society. And I was like, whoa, she created a community called Motherhood Understood, which is all about mental health for mothers, reducing the stigma, making women feel less alone. This is obviously how I experience your brand, but feel free to do this in your own way. And I just thought it would be a really cool team to talk about not only the juggle, but like how mental health is playing out in different communities of mothers right now, because all three of us have communities of mothers and are hearing from different communities. And I think it's really interesting how wherever you are in the country, these feelings of I'm not allowed to feel bad when I could be dead, right? I should be grateful. This is happening everywhere to everyone. And I really wanted to hear their unique takes on how their community is coping, what they're doing for their own mental health, and like how all of us can leave this feeling a little bit more optimistic, but realistic about our feelings day to day. Cool. So Alexis, would you mind kicking us off? Yeah, they put their Instagram handles in the chat box. Thank you. Would you mind kicking us off and just telling us a little bit about yourself and your juggle right now?
Yeah. I have 2 boys. I live in Brooklyn, the hot spot epicenter of this pandemic, which has its own challenges right now. So I have 2 boys, ages 5 and 8. We've decided to stick it out here. This is home. I have family nearby. We could have left and gone to New Jersey or Queens. I don't know how much of a better option that would have been, but we decided to stay here, and sometimes it's scary. There are a lot of people. It's really crowded, and I could go into that a little bit more later, but just to give you the overview, we live in an apartment, a 400-unit building, and it's been really stressful. I'm homeschooling 2 kids. Luckily, I have a husband here too, so he pitches in. We're both working. The juggle is very hard because I'm not the wage earner in our family. I mean, I make money, but I'm not what supports our, like this house. My husband's job comes first. That's been a really big blow. As a feminist, I've had to reconcile a lot of feelings about that. And I'm really the one taking on most of the childcare, although he does help. My job has come second, and so I fit it into the wee hours of the night. I go to bed at 2 a.m. to try to fit in all of the things I need to do. I schedule in the things like this, but that takes on Sunday night the planning of okay, so on Friday I'm going to have this, and we prepare all week so that I can do my Zoom chat. And it has not been easy, but you do what you have to do to get through. I find so much comfort in hosting a community of women where we can just share our feelings without worrying about how they fall on people because it's such an open-minded, judgment-free group.
Can I ask you, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt, but how did you come up with the name Not Safe for Mom Group? I love it.
I was working on it on the down low for a while. I think it just came to me one night in the shower.
I love it.
Because I felt like I wasn't safe for my mom group, like not safe for work. And I was just like, this is like I'm not safe for my mom group. Like everything I said in my mom group just felt like dun dun dun,
Yes.
like womp womp, like all the babies are doing the cute thing and your baby's screaming, or like, does anybody feel like, and people will be like, no. And
Yes.
so I just felt like I was always the odd man out in my group. So I was like the unsafe, like, don't let her in here kind of thing. And the idea of a mom group to me wasn't like just a mom group. It was like mom society, the moms at the coffee table in the coffee shop, like all the moms at a meetup, the moms in your like gymboree. Like I just didn't feel like I fit in. So I just felt like the outcast. So
that reminds me of Glennon Doyle. Like, you know, she says, she always talks about like when she did this Facebook challenge and it was like 20 things you don't know about me. And she's like, I'm a recovering alcoholic and da da da. And then she always says that she goes into a group and she's like, oh, we're not doing that here.
Yes.
I feel you. It's like,
so that's where it came. That's where I think it just was like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm safe for mom group. And I feel that I'm not the only one who's not safe for mom group. Like thousands of women who also feel not safe for mom group at different times in their life. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. And Catherine said the conversations of whose career gets prioritized first is really hard. And before I went to Jen, I did want to say, like, I'm curious how many people are in that same boat that you described of, oh, you're the breadwinner, so I gotta take a back seat. Because I know for me and my husband, that's definitely been part of the conversation. And it has actually had several iterations over the time, because I've been like, yeah, I'm gonna take a back seat, and then a couple weeks ago I was like, this isn't gonna work for me. Like, we need to talk about this again. So I'm curious if you don't mind typing in the chat box and saying how the career thing is played out. Like, if you're a stay-at-home mom, that it actually is convenient for your family. It's like such a gift, because it was like, okay, well, this is how it's split up anyway. But I wonder if people are having that conversation of like, oh, you make more money, so you get to be prioritized. Okay, thank you, Alexis. Jen, hello, my dear.
Hi.
Could you just tell us a little bit about your Mama Juggle right now and the group?
Sure. And I'm literally like petting my dog so he doesn't bark while I talk. Yeah, no, it's a little different but similar to Alexis, and I feel like we text every 5 seconds about the Juggle. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, so it's a little bit calmer in the sense of the COVID statistics and things like that. But I also am home with my 7-year-old all day, homeschooling him. I have just the one 7-year-old son, and my husband is working, but he goes to work every day. So I feel like there are many days where I wish he did work from home just to have an extra set of hands in the house. But at the same time, I don't know what that would look like, because he also is the breadwinner. And his job is twofold. So they're a manufacturing company, which here is considered essential business, but they're also manufacturing masks right now too for FEMA. So he does that, and he leaves around 7:30 in the morning. He gets home around 6:30. And I think one of the things I struggle with is by the time he gets home, I kind of have lost my mind and I have nothing left. So for example, last night he had done bedtime, and he'll do bedtime a lot when he gets home, since I'm, with my son all day and homeschooling and entertaining and doing all the things. And so I pretty much like feed my son dinner at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then I sit on the couch and I check out even before he gets home. But like last night, he's like, and I was on my phone, I was on my computer and on my phone, like at both. And he's like, hi, I'm over here, like he's in the kitchen. And I'm like, hi, I'm like, this is my time. This is the only time that I have, like, where it's kind of quiet. It's kind of quiet time, but there are still people around. So it's hard to be all the things, right? Like you go from, you go from having your son at school all day so you can be a work from home, the work from home mom, to now I'm trying to work from home with a lot less motivation because my just emotional state is taxed. And then I'm also a kindergarten teacher, a school principal, a gym teacher, an art teacher, right? The guidance counselor, the cafeteria manager and the cook. And so by the time he comes home, it's hard to also be a wife. Like it's too much. And I think it's too much for like anyone to handle. And I think for most of us, right, it does fall on the woman more. And before COVID, my work for me is self-care. It's very therapeutic. Getting to write and create content and, connect with a community of women that, like Alexis's community, is so supportive. They make me feel seen also when we have very little mom shaming. And right now, I of course still love my work and still love my community, but I also struggle with wanting to help everybody else and also just kind of wanting to like cocoon and like introvert and like just be quiet and like binge watch TV and like not talk to anyone. So I think all those things are kind of playing out at once. And the other thing too is a lot of this is like an emotional roller coaster. Like some days are good, some days are bad. And for me, and actually a lot of moms I've spoken to, for me, there are days where it feels like I have postpartum depression all over again, which is something I experienced almost 7 years ago. But a lot of the feelings are the same. The feelings of isolation, the unknowns, when is this going to end? I'm stuck home all day, like being responsible for a tiny human's every need. And even though he's 7, those are feelings that came up like when I, right when I brought an infant home from the hospital. My husband went back to work. And the only difference is that I get out of bed now. I didn't get out of bed back then. I barely got out of bed for 6 months. And I also actually had people helping me back then. I had a night nurse and a part-time nanny and family around. And we have none of that right now because, we're all social distancing. So that childcare and the help aspect is also gone, for many of us too.
So in your community, Jen, I love that you shared that you feel seen by your community, because I think that is another thing that's really therapeutic. That is part of the medicine of these Zoom calls, that now we're being forced to get that from our partners. And we're like, whoa, actually, this hasn't been your role. You don't actually see me. I get this from my girlfriends or my mom group or my, my online community, my work. And so I kind of want to talk about that. But in general, for your community, is it usually mothers who are in the thick of some variation of postpartum or feel like they might be postpartum, or is it all kinds?
Yeah, I think it's a range. I think we have a handful of pregnant moms, whether they're first time around or, second or third time around. We have moms who are in it right now, just had babies right now, and also people who are completely on the other side of it. So it really is a range, which actually is kind of nice because when you do post something and we share a story written by a mom each week about their experiences with a postpartum or pregnancy, mental health illness, there is always at least one person who comments, oh my God, I could have written this myself. So I think no matter where you are, there is someone else there too. So it's kind of nice that it's a range of that.
Well, because I was even experiencing like what you said about it's like triggering feelings of postpartum depression. I mean, I've got a 4-month-old, and when I've had like my really bad days, I've actually had these moments where I'm like, wait a minute, could this be postpartum depression, or is this like a new phenomenon that they're going to probably write about someday, like years from now, which is like the COVID trauma, and like figuring that out. But I do think just being self-aware to know like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of things. This is a lot. And maybe it's depression, maybe it's just COVID, maybe it's both, but making it okay. Whatever it is, it's okay. And it's totally normal. And it's so universally felt, obviously. And it sounds like by your community too, they're talking a lot about that.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like whether it's depression or anxiety, or I've even heard people who have struggled with eating disorders, any of those types of traumas, like the feelings from those things have been coming up for a lot of people being, you know, quarantined at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, from therapists, it doesn't matter what you call it. What you're experiencing right now is real.
Yeah.
And worth taking note of, and worth talking to somebody about, especially if it's impeding on your everyday. Sorry, everyone just glitched for a second.
Oh yeah, you're back.
Yeah, because people, I think we get hung up on wondering what it is and what to call it and where it's from, but it almost doesn't matter.
Yes.
You're suffering, and it's really affecting your daily life. It's worth talking to someone and recognizing it. And from the message I've been getting, because I've been talking to a lot of therapists professionally and personally, but professionally they're urging everyone, like, do a virtual session, like do some telehealth, like reach out to therapists. We're here, talk it through. This is a great time, since we're so isolated, to reach out virtually and talk through some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing and get some.
And the nice thing is that most therapists are doing telehealth now, and so many support groups have popped up online too. So there is something to go and connect with that can help you make sense and process your feelings. And if you are like wondering, you know, well, is this normal? Because nothing's normal, you know, parenting during a global pandemic, or is it something more serious? Suffering is suffering. But like Alexis said too, like the key really is how is it impacting your daily functioning? You know, so if it's really getting in the way of you taking care of yourself and taking care of your baby, and you're having more bad days than good days, that's something to really think about and notice, you know, in terms of reaching out for professional help.
Agree. Thank you for framing that so perfectly. I want to hop to the chat box. Catherine said, we're both breadwinners, me more than him, but he has to go to an office to work and I can work from home. So I'm left homeschooling kids and doing a full-time job while he goes to work and gets to be in an office all by himself with no distractions. Plus I'm doing meals, figuring out art activities. I'm working with his son and my son, and the tension is hot because his son is lying to me and struggling. Yikes.
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm sorry, Catherine. Kendra, husband, is breadwinner and in healthcare, so he still goes to work right now. I work full-time and I'm home with a 4.5-month-old. Hey, me too. 4.5-month-old. Never fully went back to work after maternity leave. Yep, I'm hearing that too. Quarantine is triggering a lot of PPD feelings for women. Just when we thought it was safe to start going out, then we're stuck again. Yeah, I think you're right, Gervais. The diagnosis isn't as important as much as the symptoms and addressing those. Yes, and so as far as addressing those, I mean, obviously, oh, hold on, we could have had a licensed therapist on here, and we probably will do something like that too, but I think this isn't about like what to do, you know. I think we all know if you're having, you know, actually maybe Jen could speak to this more, right? But if you're having suicidal thoughts, if you feel like you absolutely need help, like reach out to a therapist 100%. This conversation is more to just normalize what we are having, because I think what I'm seeing is feelings that, at least for me in the past, wouldn't be diagnosed as I need clinical help, right? This wouldn't actually be like, I need antidepressants right now. It would just be like, I'm having a real shit day and I feel totally overwhelmed and I'm drowning and I'm struggling to keep my thoughts positive. I think that is actually the new norm, right? Like I think the highs and lows that normally were more spread out over a range of time are now just packed into each day for every woman that is at home juggling all of those things. And so I think that there's some medicine in just recognizing that for all of us, not that there's anything wrong with therapy. I went for 10 years, right? Like it's like 100% agree, but also just knowing that you're not the only one. And the new baseline for mental health, I feel like has changed a little bit. Do you guys agree?
I think that if there was ever a time to practice giving yourself permission to feel shitty, you know, and feel angry and grief and, you know, that like this is hard and you can't do it by yourself, like it's now during a global pandemic. You know, I feel like, again, for all of us, and it sounds like many of us are stuck at home being and having to do all the things. that we should be able to say to ourselves, okay, it is totally okay not to be able to do all these things well. It's okay to feel angry that we have to do them, that it's okay to resent our partners if they get to go to work and have uninterrupted work time. You know, I was on a call the other night and there was a mom talking about how she feels really angry and resentful that she doesn't get to be celebrated as a mother right now because she just had her first baby. You know, so feelings of just anywhere you are, that this, whatever is happening, isn't what you had imagined this time would be like. I know for me, you know, I was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. speaking this weekend at Mom Congress. And then I was supposed to go to Boston next weekend for a job, but I would also get to see one of my best friends from college. None of that is happening. And I'm angry and sad about it. And I think then we go to this place where we say, well, I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't feel like this is hard. I shouldn't feel like this is shitty. I'm being selfish for wanting to be celebrated because I'm at home and I'm safe and my children and my family are healthy and my husband and we have paychecks. And I think that that's bullshit. I think that someone always has it worse than you. And we don't, like, I know at Motherhood and I know at Not Safe for Mom group, we don't believe in quantifying pain and suffering and struggle, right? Your struggle is your struggle. So there is none of this I should be grateful shit. We know you're grateful.
Yes.
And gratitude and grief, or gratitude and anger, gratitude and resentment, they can all sit at the same table, right? Being in any of those spaces, the anger, the resentment, the frustration, the sadness doesn't cancel out the gratitude of what you do have.
It's like a crash course for all of us in like this DIY method of coaching yourself, right? It's like, feel your feelings fully, acknowledge your feelings without judging your feelings, know that everybody can sit at the same table, like the gratitude, the sadness, the suffering. So speaking about this idea of like being like the girl who said she feels like her postpartum experience was stolen from her and she's not being seen and validated. There is a process, there is like this idea, I should say, that's mothering yourself that I learned years ago from someone. And I want to like come around to it because I feel like this is what I'm leaning on the most heavily right now. And again, this is like the opportunity in this is not to always like look on the bright side or, you know, compare your suffering to somebody else's and be like, well, I guess it's not so bad, right? Like that's not actually helpful, but it's this opportunity to validate ourselves. Like you said, like give yourself permission to just feel whatever the fuck you're feeling and not make it a big deal, or like acknowledge yourself for all the hard work that you're doing. And make that as powerful as getting it from outside sources. But I'm wondering, for you guys, is there something that you're doing to feel seen, or are you just getting that primarily from your communities?
I talk to a therapist once a week. I have to. That's my self-care. And I believe, I think that talking to a therapist doesn't mean that you have to be in a place where you're clinically depressed. Or something is terribly wrong with you. I think that it's a wonderful outlet, and something that can help anybody who's going through a tough time. And this is the tough time.
Yeah, this is it.
and so many people are having trouble. I know for a fact, because I talk to hundreds of women a day, we're having a trouble putting all of these feelings in a box. Like, what do we do with these feelings? What does that mean to mother myself? What does it mean to give myself grace? I don't always know that answer. How do I give myself permission to feel the feelings? There is somebody that I talk to once a week that really knows me very well at this point and like says the thing that's like, oh, for Alexis, that's what that means. And it's like this aha moment, and we like just talk it through. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yes, that's what I was doing. I was going to that place of guilt again that I always go to. Or like, you know, this is my mantra that I need to change, like that negative mantra. And I just find it's not because I'm clinically depressed right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just having a rough time. And so I think that it's also worth reframing. Like, you don't have to be in dire straits, even though I think a lot of us are, to need a coach, to need someone, like a virtual workout, like all these things that we might be able to work. Yeah. Like, that could be extra helpful right now if you have the means, and like 45 minutes once a week. I think it's so worth investing in, because I don't think we can do this by ourselves.
Yes. And for the person who is watching, who's never invested in themselves to speak to a therapist or a coach or whatever, this is not me being like, hire a coach if you're like, that's not what this is about. But for the person who has never talked to a therapist, for example, when you started seeing yours on a weekly basis, like, what was the thought process there? Because I think for a lot of people, making that leap for the first time is the hardest part. Like, I started seeing a therapist for my I walked myself to a therapy office when I was in college, when I was like a freshman in college. This is a long story, but when I started seeing it for my pregnancy with my first baby, that's the time that I started going back to therapy. And I had this like out of body moment of like, there's the struggle, and there's when I'm making the struggle harder than it has to be. And then there's like, it's time to sit with somebody else, because I'm too in my own head to walk myself back to anything. And I wonder for you guys what that process was like when you did make the leap to ask for help.
My walk back was just like yours. It was with my first baby.
Yeah.
The postpartum depression. That was when I was like, okay, not just about me anymore.
Yeah.
And it's still not just about us. We are the people holding up our families right now. If you look in the chat box, who is responsible for literally everything? In so many of our families, there is a man holding up in an office or a bedroom, which has now been turned into an office or a basement, for 8 hours a day, going on with life as normal, while a woman is doing her full-time job, taking care of kids and homeschooling, and like probably taking care of a newborn all at the same time.
Yeah. And thinking that she's doing a shitty job of it.
And also thinking she's doing a shitty
job. Like, not only is she doing all the shit, but she's like, oh, I really got to get my shit together. It's like, what? How are we doing?
Support needed. It's now.
Yes.
And yeah, I just can't.
I agree.
Enough.
I totally agree. Sorry, go.
I was just gonna say, I think also too, like finding and knowing who your people are right now, like your girlfriends, like
I talk to
my husband
and I talk to my friend Erin every day.
Right, we have a
text.
We have a group text that goes all day long, and I have a few of those with different groups of women, and these are texts where it's like no holds barred. I've known Alexis for like a year and a half.
Which, guys, I didn't know that they were actually friends when I asked them.
We met on Instagram a year and a half ago, and Alexis knows things about me that my friends of 20 years don't know. And I think the key is that finding this tribe of women that you can just spew all this shit to, and they spew it back, or they let you vent, and then they know when to say, yeah, that really sucks. And then they also know when to give like some helpful advice, right? Because there's nothing worse than unsolicited advice. But I also think having some connection to other women during this time, I mean, any time, but during this time is really helpful, because you can have a supportive husband. Like, my husband is fairly supportive. He, you know, when I do my work on the weekends or things like that, he doesn't care. He takes our son, whatever. But I think for women, that real connection and that real being seen emotionally comes from other women. So I think in addition to the therapist, we also need to have connection right now to other women, whether it be a group text or like a set time a week where you have a little FaceTime, Zoom happy hour, whatever it is. And if you're a new mom, you just gave birth to a baby, find some other moms that just gave birth to babies, right? When you're all in the same spot. And honestly, if you don't have that type of woman, like, go to Not Safe for Mom group, go to Motherhood Understood, go to one of these online communities and start posting. And I swear somebody will literally comment under your post, oh, I'm going through the same thing, DM me. And you'll have a new friend that you can DM at like 3 a.m. when you're up like breastfeeding or formula feeding your baby and like commiserating over what, you know, new COVID mom life is like. So I think that those two things are really important. And I love that Alexis said she doesn't go to therapy because she's like in this like curled up fetal position of being depressed. And, you know, she goes because it's self-care and it makes you feel good. It's like when you stop therapy because you feel good this week, or like you stop taking your medication when everything's going well. Like those are the times that you should continue to do those things.
Glennon Doyle talks about that too. I'm like obsessed with her book, that Untamed.
Yeah, same.
Like when you feel good and then you're like, I don't need that session. And then.
Yeah, I saw someone in the comments was talking about right now her hardest struggle is with her mom because her mom is having a really hard time social distancing from her, and she wants to please her, but she also wants to keep her family safe and healthy. And I think that I have said this quote to like 50 people in the last month after reading Untamed, right? There's the quote that says, there's gonna be plenty of times in your life, and Glennon says this to her daughter, where you have to choose to either disappoint others or disappoint yourself. Choose to disappoint others every time.
Love it. So good.
And I think that is really, really helpful right now.
Yes. That whole book. That's like, that has me thinking of so many other things now too, but yeah, it's so good. And to piggyback off what you said about like being seen by a community of women, I would say what I find to be the biggest challenge in that is I know that there's people watching who are like, well, yeah, I have friends, but we don't go there. Like, that's not, we go. And I think the piece here is vulnerability. This is what I have found. Like, I've got a lot of mom chats and not all are created equally, right? Because we don't feel safe to be vulnerable with different groups of people. And so it's awesome that you guys have that. And I would say a layer more than that is recognizing when you're connecting with women, when it's surface and when you go deeper. Because we all know when it's surface, we're just like, oh, we're just talking about the coronavirus and the weather and when they're going to stop the quarantine, right? But like going a level deeper, I have found for myself, it's like I am the initiator. I am the Glennon. I'm like, are we doing that here? Because I got to go there. And I think a lot of women in the valiant attempt to appear like we've got it together and like we're not weak or whatever, or like messed up or less than, we don't go there. And I always tell people, like, whether it's like a new neighbor that you're meeting or you're like showing up to a mom group, like go there. Because like when you were saying, Alexis, like you got to your mom group and you were like, oh, okay. It's like, if there was one person in that group who was actually worth being a friend, she'd be like, that's my person. Because that's what I do. Like whenever I'm with
you only need one.
Yeah, you just need one. Whenever I'm with a group of people and it's like that conversation, whenever there's one person that goes there, I'm like, oh, finally.
Yeah.
When are we going to talk about our problems? When are we going to like be really honest about all the things we're feeling? And I think it is a bit of a paradigm shift here that we're being called to, like, enough like beating around the bush of mental health, enough beating around the bush that everything's always shiny and happy and pretty and like put together. Like, it's never been like that, but now it's just so hard to keep up pretenses that it's like, let's just go there.
Yeah. Really and I think it's also too, like, there will always be people who, like, you might say something that's not safe for mom group life, and they're going to give you a look or whatever, but don't let that stop you. Like, say it again to the next person, because someone's going to be like, oh my God, me too. And you only really need one or two people. And, right. I think too, like what you said, like now is the time to just be vulnerable. And because like, what choice do we have? And I was also talking to someone the other day, and she suffers from anxiety, like, you know, very severe anxiety, is medicated. And she was saying that all her friends who are not really anxious, they're the ones who are like freaking right now and really struggling. And she seems to be fairly okay. And I was thinking that part of that is, I think that for a lot of us who have gone through depression or anxiety or, you know, just something like that, and because of that, whether we've gone or still go to therapy and we have been given tools and we've done some work, we've been like kind of, even without knowing, maybe putting some of that into practice right now. And people who really have chosen to stay surface for whatever reason, you can't do that anymore. Like none of the coping mechanisms that worked pre-COVID probably work right now, right? Like you can't go make a to-do list or organize your closet or like go to the
Or
gym.
control, or
Right.
bury yourself in your work and like leave the child rearing.
Right.
Like you gotta actually
Right.
have it all together.
Right. And I think a lot of us who have gone through, whether we've gone through like clinically diagnosed disorders or not, if we've struggled and we've been open about them and we've done some work around them, we have some coping mechanisms that maybe other people don't. And maybe that's why, even though we're still suffering, we're still kind of able to use some of those tools. We know to keep talking to our therapists. We know when we have to tap out, you know, and things like that.
100%. It's like the self-care is almost like baseline. Like if you've been talking to somebody for years and then this happens, it's like it's already, the net is already there. So yeah, and I think also to address maybe people that haven't been in that spot before, it's like just normalizing, you know, just recognizing like what you're feeling. A lot of us empaths have been feeling for a really long time regardless, right? So like, welcome to the club. It's a great club to be part of. It's easier to find your people when you are. I think it's easier to find your people when you're deeply feeling, like when you just go there all the time because you just didn't have a choice. Like you've been using those practices for a long time. You've been seeking out people and like sisterhood and places to feel seen and supported for a long time. But recognizing if this is your first time, it's totally fine. Welcome to the human experience. Like it's normal. If we've all made it this far, like you're going to be totally fine. I like can't keep up with this chat box because it's like the answers are so long, but I got back on Lexapro about 2 weeks ago and feel like it's made a huge difference. So I have lots of feelings and frustrations, but I'm glad I got over the guilt trip. I was giving myself for needing to get back on Lexapro and just started taking it. Yes. So the guilt, maybe we should just go to the guilt real quick. Anybody else feeling like, I just feel like there's guilt. You could spin guilt any way you want. You could feel guilt for going on Lexapro. You could feel guilt for not going on Lexapro. You could feel guilt for working out and going into your bedroom for 10, 30, 60 minutes, or you could feel guilt for not working out and going into your bedroom, right? You could feel guilt for hopping on a Zoom call, or you could feel guilt for not hopping on a Zoom call. Like, what are you girls personally experiencing with the guilt? Like, what is the biggest thing that you're faced with guilt-wise right now?
I could tell you probably really easily. I also want to say good for you for going back on your Lexapro. I remember at the beginning of this talking to their mom, and both of us were like, thank God we're medicated. It definitely helps. But I think for me, I have first of all, mom guilt is rampant, not in a global pandemic. So know that, you know, this is exacerbated, you know, by a million. For me, I keep thinking how wonderful quarantine would be if I didn't have children. Like it would be a magical experience.
It would be.
I just could, and I like fantasize about it. I
Tell
could
me
wake
about
up,
it. What's your fantasy?
I wake up when I want. I like eat the food that I've had time to cook for myself. I exercise, and then I just like sit on the couch and read books and binge watch TV shows, and it's magical. And then I'm like, well, that's a horrible thing to say, or like, you know, and then I go back and forth like, well, when my son's older, am I gonna miss, you know, I'm gonna miss this time. Like, I really have no interest in like entertaining a child during the day. You know, like we need to go outside and like ride his bike, and I'm just like, do you want the iPad? You know, like I don't want to go outside, you know. So I think just that kind of struggle of like having to play and really having to mother. Like I always say I love being a mother, but I hate mothering.
Yeah.
And like I really hate mothering during the global pandemic. But I think
playing is different than mothering, don't you think?
Yeah, but I still feel like it in some ways it's part of it. Like, mommy, play with me. Like play airport with me. Like let's go outside and do this. And I just don't want to do any of it. I just want to do what I want to do for myself.
Yeah.
Which isn't always super realistic. So I think that's where my guilt has always come from. It's just like in my face even more now because we're home all day together.
Yeah. I just toggled with that. when I had weeks before COVID, when I had weeks where I'd be super enmeshed in my work, I'd feel guilty about not being present for my children. And then the weeks where I was like so there as a mom, I'd feel guilty about not being so present with my work. And so now it's the same thing where like the days where I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to get a lot of shit done. I'm like, oh man, I was really just calling it in, like mailing it in with my kids this week. I was just giving them an iPad, letting them do like enrichment games. Like yesterday, we barely did school because I just couldn't fight my 5-year-old when he didn't want to write, he didn't want to read. And I was like, I'm done. I give up. I'm going to go back to the thing I was doing, put on a movie. I feel guilty the most about what I'm not doing for my kids right now. And I compare myself to like what I see online and hear about like the gung-ho-ness of other moms really embracing this time to teach their kids and play with their kids and savor the moment and all this stuff. And I am savoring moments. Like I really love the moments with my kids, but there are some moments that I don't love a lot. And that I just don't have moments for me.
Yeah.
And like what Jen is saying, I'm used to having a lot more moments for myself. I'm not at home. I'm not a stay-at-home mom. And I miss the time for myself and my work, and I'm a writer and a creator, and I don't have time to do that unless it's midnight. And so I'm not present during the day a lot of the times when I wish I was, and that makes me feel bad.
Yeah. And from the chat box, it's like, everybody's like, yeah, me too. Me too, me too, me too, me too. You guys are not the only one. And like, it really just does have to be a moment. Like, this is the other thing that I'm always blown away by. Like, if sometimes I'll lay in bed at the end of the night and I have had a lot of trouble falling asleep, even though I'm exhausted, because I'll just be thinking about all the things that I didn't do that I wanted to do, or, you know, what did I do wrong? And so I've tried to like do this thing where I'm like, I'll try to remember moments. Like, what was a moment with each child that was good? One moment. And then I like remember that one moment and I'm like, it was really good though. It was literally like anywhere from 30 seconds to 20 minutes if it's like an amazing day, but it really was just a moment. And then it's like, you know, training the brain to look for that part, not to be like positive all of the time, but so that you could get some sleep so that you can like rest your head on the pillow and feel the equal weight. Because what I find, and I talk about this a lot, is like we feed the guilt and the anxiety and the not enoughness way more than we do the other side of the coin. And so for every shitty moment, for every time you like gave the kid an iPad, sounds like you also played what did you say? I forget, Jen. Like you airport. Like I am not a player. I don't do that. I don't like playing imaginary games with my kids. And I can't tell you how many moms I talk to that feel this way, but it's like, we don't then focus on what we do instead. So like maybe some mom is like baking, maybe like I like to just go on walks. I like to, you know, let's go for a bike ride. I'll do that with you. Let's have a dance party. That's my thing. I grew up dancing, right? So that to me is play, but it's like, I choose it. It's what I want to play, not what you want to play.
I'm such
so
a
feeding that, like focusing on that.
I'm like a great outing mom. I'm great at taking kids to museums and to playgrounds and like play dates, and all has been taken away.
That's so frustrating.
And that's just the thing that kills me. I can't do any of the things I'm good at as a mother right now. I am not good at coming up with a craft.
No, I hate
terrible. But to your point about thinking about the positive moments, I have to say this is something I never did before, but I got the 5-minute gratitude journal that like the one on Amazon. It's like literally, it's like a horrible color.
I mean, I've heard of it. I haven't actually seen it.
A 5-minute gratitude journal, and you have to fill it out in the morning and at night. And at night you go to bed thinking about the things that were good from the day. And it's exactly what you're saying about like you have to pay attention to the moments that were good, and it really does help.
It does.
It shifts your brain into that.
It retrains your brain to seek out more of that. But if your brain is used to just like it's like a lazy brain. It's like our primal brain. We're just like, oh, I suck. No, let's think about that for a while. Yeah, that's an easy thought process. Let's follow that through. And it's like, no, look at all of these examples of all the ways I suck. But then we don't train it like the other side of that muscle. It's like, but there's like, I did like keep my kid alive today, or I did, you know, show up for a Zoom call, or like seeing those tiny ways. It is strengthening that muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, what Alexis said with like comparing what you see online, because I do the same thing and I do it with work life and with mom life right now.
Mhm.
Because I feel like I'm doing, I don't want to say the minimum work,
Mhm.
but I definitely feel like I'm doing less in the sense of like what my productivity and what I churn out. And then I see so many people just churning out like content and guide and webinar after what, and all these things. And they're so on top of the COVID information. And I'm just like, I can't even like make
Mhm.
a meme without wanting, you know what I mean? Like, and so there's that comparison. And right then there's same with the, like, I am not sitting down with my son and doing a craft or like coming up with these creative things. I saw something on Facebook where this mom did this whole, like the kids go to New York experience
What?
and the whole day, and like, and she's very creative and all the things, but the whole thing, I was like reading and watching the pictures and I was just exhausted. But then part of me too was also like, wow, like those lucky, like I can't see myself doing that for the kids. So I think it's really easy to compare, and I like the idea of going to bed and thinking of like a few good moments,
Mhm.
because it then like gets you out of all the other things that you've maybe seen that day where you like feel shitty about yourself. Like yesterday, right? So like I haven't taken my son outside this whole week. Like we haven't been outside, and I go walk the dog and I'm like, do you want to come? And he's like, no. And I'm
How
like,
old is he
okay. So
again?
like
He's like
he's
older.
7.
Yeah.
And so like he runs around like a and like a crazy person, but we haven't really gone outside and done like physical activity. But then yesterday we watched a Broadway show on Amazon Prime Broadway, and
What? Writing that down.
we
Sorry.
watched Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is like a show that my parents took me to multiple times when I was little. And then at the end, the two of us were dancing on the coffee table together. And
Moment.
I think that,
Check.
right, and that is something I do enjoy, like show
Mhm.
tunes and dancing.
Yes, me
And then being
too.
able to share that with my son, which is something my dad like passed down to me. But so right, that was my moment yesterday, even though like I could probably name a million other things that were big fails this week.
Yeah, and like also that's like I almost think of it as like your mommy blueprint, right? Like it's so easy to judge the mom who's the crafter or the New York City for a day or whatever the fuck that was. But what I've noticed is like whenever I find myself in judgment, it's not about that person, it's about me,
Oh,
right?
always.
So then I'm like, wait, that's her thing. Like she is a crafter, good for you. She just also happens to be really good at like converting that into social media content. But for you, Jen, I was just like struck by this when you said like everybody's like doing all these webinars, and I got your newsletter just like right before I opened this, and I was like, holy shit, she's doing so much stuff. Like she has her shit so together. And this is what Alexis and I were talking about before you got on the call. And it's funny because like I don't usually do conversations when all three of us do very similar things with the
Right.
same community, right? With the same demographic, not community. But we are all looking at each other like, whoa, she's doing like 5 IG lives
I
next
know.
week. And then I'm like, yeah, I did my event today. And we're all looking at each other thinking we're doing so much. To like, that's fine, don't worry. To recognize like all of us think this about each other, no matter what you're thinking, whether it's like in your career or in your parenting style. And I would add to that what you said about your son, like, oh, you're not a go outside, play around mom, but you're like a dance on the table to Broadway show tunes mom. Maybe that is also going to be your thing, right? Like there are the moms that are being examples to their kids right now by working. Like that is a beautiful example to give your kid if you feel called to that. If you feel passionately about like your online community of mothers, which is so beautiful, and you put so much love and passion into, like that is fucking inspiring, and that is your thing. Like that is your blueprint. And just because it's not super focused on like playing with kids, that's okay. Because I remember having this conversation with a friend like years ago, and she was like, I feel like you enjoy your kids more than I do. Like I don't do this with them, I do that. And I was like, all moms are supposed to be different. Like that's the point. Like we shouldn't all be vanilla. Like yeah, I like to dance around and go on bike rides with my kids. That's my thing. That's and I prefer being a mom to working a lot of the time. And you can see that reflected in my life. And, you know, I don't want to work that much. And that's okay. It's not like right or wrong, but it's good for all of these kids to have all of these different examples of their mom, like in her element doing her thing. And it's not going to be what we think. It's not going to be like, I think Tamsin made a comment, like, you don't know what they're looking at you and thinking, my mom's so cool. She lets me play on my iPad all day and we did a Broadway dance party. They're not thinking like, why didn't I, whatever. I didn't want to go outside, right? So it's like recognizing your special sauce, I think is really helpful for me when I get into that trap of like, whether it's in work or motherhood, of comparing myself, because I'm like, it's just her thing. You know, like, it's not my thing, and that's okay. You know, hey kids, here's your virtual field trip to New York, the epicenter of disease. No one wearing masks, people walking 3 feet apart at most. Hooray!
I will say that I try to be like not judgy about those things, because I do recognize that when I look at that and I'm like, I roll my eyes, it's totally about me, because I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not doing that.
But
I like to think that the moms who are doing things like that, you know, making the color coded schedules, doing crafts, they genuinely enjoy that stuff. So then they're right. The ones that I'm sure there are definitely ones that are doing it for social media or just doing it, but plenty of them, you know, who cut their kids' sandwiches out in shapes of flowers, you know, and things like that, they genuinely enjoy it. And so for those people, they're being just as authentic as one of us who I think is like on the Barbie's, like, I want to bang my head against the wall, right? Like it, which is, I just took from the chat.
Yeah,
I thought that was really funny. So I do want to point that out.
Agree.
I just want to answer what Catherine wrote about like going for a drive and leaving everyone at home to fend for themselves. Yesterday, I had a terrible migraine. So my husband, God bless, let me sleep in. He took over the Zoom classroom lesson. Now, every day I'm the Zoom teacher. I'm the, you know, homeschool teacher. My kid like fights me, bites on pens, spins in his chair, prostrates himself on the floor, cries. This time, like, I walked in, I got out of bed, and he's like sitting straight. He's like doing math. His teacher's like, very good, Gabi. And there's my husband at the table, you know, doing his work. They're working together. I'm like, so all they needed was for me to leave. He just needed me to not be there. So me not being there made for like an amazing class. And so that's what happens when mom leaves. Everything is not only fine, it's better.
Yes.
Let's do this experiment more often.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And if you went in the car, it would be fine, maybe even better.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I've done this too. Getting in your car and going for a drive, blasting music by yourself, that is major self-love and self-care right now. Like, that sounds super therapeutic to me, just blasting the music. And I think a lot of it too, and I said this to Alexis when she sent a picture of her kid, of Gabi, you know, look what happens when dad takes over school. But I think for a lot of our kids, where they're like emotional support animals. And so they feel, and I said that to you, I'm like, mommy's the emotional support human. Like, they feel or know that like they can act out or do all those things. And part of it too is, so sometimes we save one activity for my husband to do with my son when he gets home. So he like has he's still doing school a little bit with him. So last night they're doing the reading activity together, and I like go over, and I used to be a teacher. I taught seventh graders and ninth graders. So I've always been meant to teach older kids, not young kids. But I swear my husband is way more patient too, as he sits down to do these activities with my son. You know, like my son like writes the B backwards like 4 times, and I'm like, it's the other way, you know, like, but Jason, for these activities or where you have to like put these things together or whatever, he is so much more patient too. And I'm okay with it. Like, I have gotten to a place where I don't need to be like, oh, why is my husband better at school? Like, I think it's great. And then I go sit on the couch and like check out. And they do their thing.
And it's like, to me, that just reminds me of like how many times I've caught myself thinking only I can be it all for my family. Like, that's my job. If I really love my family, I'm going to do all the things and be be all the things when it's actually, like you're saying, like a disservice, because often when you walk away, it empowers your kid to actually like stop focusing so hard on pissing you off and actually just be a fucking, adolescent, like a more mature adolescent for a minute. Or like it empowers your partner to step up and be like, I think I got this, without you being like, no, you're not going to do it right. It's like, no, yeah, you got this. Bye.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say, I think the hardest thing and probably the most like self-care thing you can do for yourself as a mom is to let go, and like let go of control. And so for me, that was forced upon me because of the postpartum depression. I physically couldn't get out of bed or take care of my child, so I had to let everybody else pitch in. So for me, it's always been fairly easy to go hands off or go take a trip, or leave for work or do whatever. But I learned it really early on because I had to. I think it is very empowering, and also it makes it easier on you when you can let go and let other people, especially your partner, pitch in and do things and not tell them how to do it. Right? So we can't tell our partners, hey, I'm going out, like bedtime's at 7. Okay, he might do bedtime differently. He might give them cookies right before bed. You would never do that, but you know what? That's what he does, and he'll either learn that they're going to take longer to go to bed because they just had sugar. But I think once you're able to figure out how to let go of that control and not tell the other person how to do it, just let them do their thing, it actually just it gets better and it gets easier.
I'm like snapping, like,
Yes.
yes, 100%. If you take away one thing, take away that, like, let go of the control. And also, just for you, Katie, who, by the way, Catherine Hansen, I thought you were an actual person I know named Catherine Hansen, but I realized it's my friend Katie Hansen that is actually speaking. But like, I wanted to tell you, I had told Kevin, like the first month of quarantine, I was like, I just feel like I need to scream. Like, I feel like I need to go into a room and scream at the top of my lungs, but there's nowhere, I can't do it. And now the windows are open because it's like nice weather and our neighbors already think we're crazy. And so a few weeks in, I actually went into my room and I screamed into a pillow, like as loud as I could possibly do it. Because I was like, I just have all of this energy. I literally need to move it. And it was amazing. So if you're feeling like you need to scream or go for a drive or check out, I highly recommend you do it, because it was literally like this total release for me. And it's like, there's all of this stuff that's just gunked up in our bodies and our emotional bodies too. So
there should be like a primal scream time for moms.
Yeah.
Yes, like at 7, how you go and like bang the pots and stuff for the workers.
That would be amazing.
Yes, I love that. Alexis, start that.
You can like hear it in outer space.
We need to start that and like make it go viral.
Yes. What time? I feel like it should be at like,
it's gotta be after the kids go to bed.
No, it's like so, when you really need to scream. Like before the kids are in bed is when you need to scream.
Yeah.
After you've been parenting since 6 and it's like 3 and you're like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Such good stuff in these chat boxes. Last night, my 5-year-old daughter told me that I don't do anything for her and she can do it. So I told her she can fix her breakfast and lunch and do her work and take care of herself and see how it goes. But I would love to just let her fend for herself for a day. Our kids and husbands don't understand how much we do. Yeah, I feel like I have felt underappreciated during all of this because we as moms have given up it all during this crisis. I feel you, Sarah Ellen. I see you and appreciate you. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge all of you on this call, whether you are a participant or one of our gracious panelists. Like, thank you for what you do to keep the world spinning. I literally don't know what would happen to the world if there were no moms. And I know that it's so hard. I know I can just speak from my own experience. I've had some real challenges in holding all of it, for everyone. And I just want to acknowledge you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for making time for yourselves, especially if you just joined this to find your community for an hour. we're going to get through this. Anything else anybody wants to say or ask before we wrap this up? I want to be really respectful of people's time. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. It's been really, really nice to be a part of your community. I really like your vibe, and I like all the support that you put out there. And yeah, it's a really loving, welcoming community that feels very similar.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's why I was like, oh, we all have like
agree.
the same communities. That's cute. Like,
yeah.
good.
Moms,
Moms need moms, 100%.
Yes, we do.
So let's all stick together, and I will send out a follow-up email with ways that you can keep in touch with both Alexis and Jen, and join their newsletters and connect with their communities. And there's just so much goodness that they have to share. So I'm hashtag blessed. I'm feeling hashtag blessed that you are here with the Champagne Society. And yeah, that's it for today, guys. Go and Godspeed. Happy May.
Come see us at Not For Mom group. And
What?
Mother Understood. Come see us at
Not
Mom.
For Mom. I'll put the link and everything in the follow-up email and the recording of this video. So
Cool.
bye.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.